All right, this is JP DeRaw, show number 175 here in June 7th, 2016. And tonight we have Mitch Russo. Hopefully I said your name right, Mitch.
Yes, you did.
I mess those up quite often. We have Mitch coming on. He's going to talk to us about his photography life, about his travels, and he's gone to some very interesting places, some of the ones that are on my bucket list I would love to go to, and talk to him about that. Before we get there, I want to go over a few housekeeping things. We'll have a few at the end, too. And I just got a cheer. Okay, I didn't mean to go over this, but now since I just got it, I'll go over it. Tim has been kicking my butt on our Fitbit thing. We're Fitbit friends, and he has been kicking my butt. And if you don't know, I might have 1 or 2 pounds or more that I need to lose, more than what Tim does. So I've been trying. Tim, last night after I got done preparing for tonight's show, it was 10:30. And I said, I'm not at 10,000 steps. I got to go out and walk to get my 10,000 steps. So I was walking the neighborhood. Unfortunately, did not get arrested as I was trying to get my steps. Still not catching up to you, but
I had 20,000 yesterday.
Oh,
Whoa.
gosh,
That's a lot of steps.
that's just
I
that's
try to
demoralizing for me, Tim.
I'm sorry. I'm only at 10,500 today.
Oh, good gosh.
And in a couple of days this week, I was down like the 5,000. So this has been a bad week, but I will get it back.
Yeah. Well, to get us back on track, don't forget to download our app on the iTunes store. This is the Android Play Market store, Play Market, whatever it's called. The JP DeRaw app where you get the videos. This is the video where you can see the videos. We also, if you want to listen to just the audio, there's the audio feed, which will come up with graphics if my phone had a connection, and also what's in your camera bag. Why don't my phone have a connection? Anyway, but get the app for your phone or for your tablet. Android and iOS both of them are available. And Tim, this month is what is our 5-year anniversary.
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
I
5
can't believe
years.
it.
June 21st is 5 years since we've been doing the show. Tim came on show number 4. Show number 4 and has been here ever since. And Tim, also, we're closing in. We're not going to do it by the anniversary date, but this summer, we definitely would do it. We're closing on 1 million views / listens.
Wow.
Did you know that? 1 million.
No,
Yeah.
I did not know.
We should do it sometime in July or August. 1 million.
Very
It's
impressive.
It's a
I
big
would think
milestone.
our next million comes a lot quicker.
I would hope so. Yes, I would hope so. If you don't get to stay for the whole show here with Mitch, or if you came in a little late and just get me and you missed a little bit of the intro, the show is recorded and is available on iTunes, YouTube, and Vimeo for video, and for the audio feed, it is on Stitcher, Spreaker, iTunes, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Podomatic, Podbean, and Google Play Music, and maybe some other rogue sites I don't even know about. But it is out there for you, recorded. It's generally out there on YouTube first by a few days after the show. Actually, the unedited version is available right after the show, but the edited version where I cut off the beginning and end and have a clean intro and exit is available a few days afterwards. I think that's the main housekeeping stuff I want to do. Oh, one more thing. Tomorrow night, A.D. Wheeler and I are starting a new show, only once a month, where we're going to be going over the images. A.D. is going to be giving us a critique of the images that were entered into our photo contest. We do a photo contest every month, and A.D., who is a professional photographer and just a really good guy, is going to be going over these images and giving feedback on them with the purpose of helping the photographers grow and become a better photographer. We're going to stream that to Facebook only tomorrow night. This will not be a standard like Tuesday night thing. It'll be whenever AD and I can work out the time. But I'll publish it on our Facebook page right after this show tonight, and we'll be trying to do that every month. So if you want to enter our photo contest and get AD to review your image, and with the purpose of getting critical feedback from somebody who knows what they're doing to help you grow, enter our contest either in our Facebook group or on our webpage. Either way, we'll do it. All right. Now, let's talk to Mitch. Mitch, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into photography. What is your background photography? Did you go to school for photography or anything like that?
Well, actually, I started in photography when I was a little boy, and I remember an uncle bringing over a Brownie camera, and he actually had pictures from the Brownie that he had developed, and I was so taken back by the pictures and by the camera itself that he gave it to me.
Wow.
And I then took my allowance for 2 weeks in a row and saved it up. And I went to the drugstore and bought a roll of film and a developing kit. And it was, at the time, if I remember correctly, it was 35 cents.
Wow.
And then I loaded up the film in the Brownie and I was hooked. That was the beginning of me being a photographer as a little boy, probably about maybe 11 years old.
Okay. Okay. So you started back in the film days. I had one back. I had one of the little Kodak with the tube, but I never
Yep.
really got into it to the digital side.
Hmm.
So you got into it with your Brownie. When did you start getting into it more seriously and start, looking at it as not just a thing to take snapshots, but to actually become, to improve your photography?
Sure. So it turns out that I actually sort of dabbled in photography. I liked it. It was fun. But I was really a dabbler until about I would say about 1981, 1982. And I started to see some work that I had never seen before by Ansel Adams and by John Sexton and other black and white large format photographers. And I just decided that I had to do that. I just felt like that was what my calling was. And at the time, I was also, I was getting, I was working a full-time job. And so I'm trying to spend some time with photography. I set up a small darkroom and I wasn't really giving it a lot of attention, but I was using my gear. And then in 1985, I started a software company and it started to grow like wildfire. So I put all that stuff away. Then in 1988, that's when I really got into it big time again. And in 1988, I decided that I was going to study with the masters of photography and really learn the craft and the art. And that's when I sought out people like Howard Bond and John Sexton and Ron Rosenstock and people who are really the masters at the art of black and white photography. And from there, I just kept going and going and going, and I couldn't stop. I just love the idea of high fidelity, high resolution, super beautiful, rich black and white images.
Now, back in the 80s, there was no social media. There was there was very few people had any form of email type thing back then, back in the late 80s.
Right.
How did you, when you say you studied with them, you physically met them and worked with them?
Oh, yes. I would travel to their homes and work with them in their dark rooms, or I would meet them in the field at various locations. And, many times I would do workshops with these guys. And I mean, over and over again. I worked with, certain photographers. I worked with them probably 3 or 4 times a year in the field. And then I would go to their home and I'd work with them in the darkroom. Howard Bond, for example, taught me the art of fine craft printing, black and white printing, large format negatives. And he taught me about unsharp masks, and he taught me about all the stuff that, that the technique was about. And then we go out into the field, and then the vision is where that started to develop for me.
Well, I don't know how old you are, but I'm and Tim, or we're both, we're not young anymore. But so I remember the 80s, but what I don't remember is what was available as far as software goes. I know I got a computer. First computer was when I was in high school. So that would have been in the mid 80s
Right.
or so. But in 88, was there any kind of Photoshop? You mentioned unsharp mask. How were you doing unsharp mask?
Well, it's because actually the unsharp mask is when you expose a piece of positive film and sandwich it with the actual negative itself, which is the term mask comes from. It's an actual mask. And I used to use a pin register, and I used to, make sure that the original negative and the positive negative was mounted and aligned together. That's how this all started.
Wow. You know, I'm even still thinking. You know, I grew up before computers and before social media and all that. But I'm thinking, all right, you went on a workshop with these guys. How did you even know about the workshop before
Yeah,
there was the
really.
internet? How did we know anything? How did you
Right, I know. It feels that way, doesn't it?
How did
It
you get
turns
their
out,
phone number to even call them?
I know. It's so funny. It started out with an invitation. There was a photographer named Craig Stevens, and through a friend, I got invited to his workshop in Colorado. And then when I went to his workshop in Colorado and I meet all these other photographers and they saw some of my work and they say, "Oh, you absolutely got to speak to Ron Rosenstock and Howard Bond." And I said, "Who are those guys?" And so I wrote down their names, and turns out this guy named Ron Rosenstock, whose work was magnificent, lives only 25 miles away from where I do.
Oh,
So
that's great.
I know. So I called him on the phone and I said, "Hey, I want to work with you. I want to learn more about your stuff." So he said, "Hey, drive on over and come to my studio." So I went over to his studio and I'm looking in awe at his amazing, gorgeous 20 by 24 large format black and white prints. And he says, "Well, look, I'm going to Ireland. Do you want to come with me?"
Wow.
I said, "Yeah." So I basically ended up going to Ireland with Ron 6 times.
That's
Wow.
incredible.
Because I couldn't stop. First of all, Ireland was amazing. Ron was amazing, and I loved working with Ron, and I learned so much from him. And then as I did this, I kept expanding my scope and my vision, and then my technique, and I started to want to learn, a different style of landscape photography. So I sought out John Sexton, who worked with Ansel Adams for many years, and then I learned with John, and I spent time with John in the field, and we visited amazing places in America like Canyon de Chelly and the entire Southwest area. And we spent weeks wandering through those areas just with our cameras, capturing images. It was incredible.
And that was all on film back then.
All on film, all view camera, all sheet film.
Wow, that is amazing. Now, one thing with me, myself, and the other landscape photographers I talk to, a lot of them want to shoot solo. They want to be left alone. They want to go at their own pace. A single shot may take them hours or sometimes even longer to get the shot. How was it with you traveling to Ireland with him, and were y'all going out shooting all day together? How did that
Yes.
work?
Well-
Two landscape photographers seem like it might both be two lone shooters, but now you're together.
Well, what ends up happening is that in the beginning, I wanted to sort of see what he was doing and how he did it. But then later, what I would do is we would go to a location and, the van would stop. We'd both go separate directions and meet back, 2 hours or 3 hours later. And that's how we would shoot. And then that night, we never would develop our film in Ireland, but we would clean our negative holders and we would reload in a dark changing room that he had at the house.
Okay.
And so, but in many other cases, I would have to travel to, for example, when I traveled to Peru, I didn't really have the ability to change and have film slides, film holders and change film. So I used ready loads back then, Kodak ready loads.
Okay.
So it wasn't so bad, but all that stuff came to an end. Would you like to know how it came to an end for me?
Yeah. How did it come to that?
So here's how it came to an end for me when it came to film. I bought a small digital camera and I was sort of playing around with it, and I liked it, and it was fun, but it wasn't serious photography. But I heard that Canon was just releasing this new camera called the Canon 5D.
Mm-hmm.
And so I ordered the Canon 5D with one lens, which was the 24-105, and I stuck it in my bag just before I left for Morocco. And so I get to Morocco, and again, I'm with Ron, by the way, and we get to the Hassan Mosque in Casablanca, and Ron has spent 6 months getting us permission to go into the Hassan Mosque with tripods.
Wow.
So we finally arrive at the door and we walk up to the door and we're so excited because this is an amazing place. And we present the letter that we have signed by the king of Morocco that says we can use tripods in the mosque. and we presented it to the guard at the front gate. He opens up the letter, he looks at the letter, and he says, "King changed his mind. No tripods."
Oh, oh my goodness.
So we were like, "What?" And we were devastated. Like, now what do we do? So we basically had to leave all of our camera gear in a little closet. And I said, "Wait a second. I remember I have this Canon, whatever it was, 5D with me in my bag. Why don't I grab it and, just, stick a memory card in it and play with that while I'm inside?" So I did. And I started to make images, and I saw some of them showing up on the screen. What I did was I started to do something that with film I would never do. I bumped the ISO to like 1,500, and I started putting the camera on the floor and doing time exposures at 1,500, and then I was hand holding at like 1,600 and around there. And I would never do this because that was ridiculous. I mean, with a view camera, 64 ISO was just amazing, and I was so happy to have that. But now I was hand holding this camera at 1,500 and 1,600 ISO, and all I could see was the back of the camera, and it looked okay. But when I got home and I started to see the images on my computer screen, because back then we didn't travel with photo editing computers, it was just too bulky, I started to realize that the resolution of the Canon 5D was now about at the same level as my medium format gear. And I knew it would be getting better faster. And I was so blown away by the quality of what I was able to capture with this Canon 5D that I decided at that moment in time that I'm done with film gear. And I just sold it all, and I went up and I just bought all digital gear at that moment in time.
And what year?
What year was that?
Yeah, what year was that?
I'm thinking it was 2005.
Okay. And do you remember what megapixel that camera was?
12 megapixels.
Okay. Yeah, that was a turning point for me too, as far as the resolution had finally hit a good mark.
Right.
And I think that was it for me also. I think 2005 was when I got my first DSLR.
Okay.
It's funny.
We're in the same range there.
My camera, wherever it is, you probably can't see it right there, is a D700, which is a 12 megapixel camera. So I'm still shooting with 12 megapixels.
That's okay. I got to tell you, in fact, some of those images were some of the most popular images I ever made. And they still, I'll tell you, even today, given the advanced editing software that I use, I'm able to make them look amazing, even at very, very large print sizes. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, nothing wrong with older gear. You just have to know what you're getting into. For example, I couldn't take that Canon 5D and keep the shutter open for 10 minutes like I do with my Sony A7R II now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
well, speaking of gear, what are you shooting with these days? So you mentioned a Sony just now.
Yes.
I think you're still using Canon too, aren't you?
No, let me just close the door. There's some noise in the background here.
Okay.
Excuse me for a sec. Okay. Sorry, I have a sticky door there. So right last year, before going to Iceland for the 5th time, I rented a Sony A7R with one lens and one battery. And I make the point of saying one battery because I didn't know at the time that the Sony A7R was absolutely a battery fiend. So
Yes.
I had to, and that, by the way, I also took all my Canon gear and I took this one Sony, which was a rental with me, and I started to go back and forth. And I noticed right away that it was so much easier to compose with the Sony than it was with my Canon gear. I had a 5D Mark III, which I loved, but I was just used to the bulk of the 5D Mark III, and it didn't have an articulating screen in the back. But then I had this Sony, and it was small, and it was super powerful, and the shake resistant, the internal stabilization was amazing, and I could articulate the screen, so now I could shoot at lower angles. And I'm starting to make pictures that I never could really make before. And started as the trip went on, I started using my Canon gear less and less and less. And I started using the Sony gear more and more and more. And I also noticed something unusual, because when I would bring my negatives home at night, or my images, my memory cards home at night, and I plugged them into my MacBook, I started to see this amazing amount of dynamic range that I never could get out of the Canon. And I actually stopped shooting sequences of 3 images for HDR. I just went shooting single
one.
frame Sony sensor images, and I was able to get all the highlights and all the shadow detail, which was shocking to me.
Yeah, that's one of my questions I had later was how many of these images are HDR? Some of them have that HDR look, but it could be, like you just said, a single image that you then, edit, post-process that way.
Right. So probably everything up until last year was shot as HDR. Not everything, but when I did that type of work, when I was looking to compress multiple, light levels into a single image, I would shoot HDR. But after that, after I got the Sony, that was over. I basically hardly use 3 images anymore with the Sony equipment. I just don't need to.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned 5th trip to Iceland. Iceland's one of those places I'd love to go. Iceland, New Zealand, Antarctica.
Right.
But 5th trip to Iceland, do you travel with people there? Do you travel alone? Are you doing workshops there? What's going on?
I actually lead a trip to Iceland, and I bring a bunch of folks and friends and sometimes strangers, and I'm actually going back again in August. I'm going to Iceland for only 5 days, and I'm going to Greenland to photograph the icebergs.
Okay.
This summer, because I really have been wanting to do that. It's almost, for me, it's going to be a completely unknown territory. I've never been to Greenland before, and I've never photographed icebergs before.
Yeah.
So it's going to be an experience that I'm looking forward to, and I'm going to be bringing my Phantom 3 drone with me too. So
that'll be nice.
Yeah.
So what is it like traveling to Iceland and shooting? You just get in a car and drive around, or
You do. So whenever I go someplace, typically I go on a trip of some sort with a guide, and I usually go with other photographers.
Okay.
And so, for example, the first time I went to Iceland, I went with Ron Rosenstock, and he had an organized trip to Iceland, and there was probably, I'm going to guess, about 6 of us, maybe 5, 6, 7 people, I don't remember, and it was a wonderful trip. I got incredible images. And, the way I think about it is that, it's a wide world. And why go back more than once when you have so many other places to go?
Yeah.
Except when I just keep getting better and better images every time I go. So I can't really stop. I'm addicted to Iceland.
Well, I was thinking that when I looked at your Iceland images and your New Zealand images and maybe in another place, but I'm sure this may apply to a lot of places, but those 2 particularly, that you go to one of these places where you have a limited amount of time. Now, you said 5 days this time, even if it's a month, whatever it is, a limited amount of time, unless you're going to move there. And it seemed like it could be overwhelming. There's just a lifetime of images there, but not a lifetime to spend getting them.
That's right. So, again, for someone like me, when I go on these trips, I'm completely immersed. So most of the time, I'm arriving in that country. I may rest for 90 minutes, and then I'm right out and I'm shooting till it's dark, and then we have dinner, and then I go back out at night and I shoot all night long, and then I go back and I try and get some sleep, and I'm up in the morning for sunrise, and I'm out shooting, and I do this for 10 days, 2 weeks at a time. So by the time I come home from quote unquote vacation,
you wore out.
I'm exhausted.
You need another vacation.
Yeah.
Right. I want to come home and rest so I can go back to work.
Well, speaking of one, you just said when you're out there, you're in the moment or whatever. You had a quote in one of your blog posts. You have a blog, and we'll show that here in a minute, where you've done a lot of blog posts. But I was reading one of them where you said something about let's see if I get this right. I don't see when I'm not looking.
That's right.
Can you explain a little bit about what you're saying there?
Yeah, this is so for me, and I know that there are a lot of talented photographers I mean, a lot of great, talented photographers out there who I think their work is incredible, and I love seeing some of their work. But for me, I really don't get to arrive at that place until I am grounded where I'm going. And I hate to use the word, it's a bit cliche, but it's what makes me present. So when I leave the country and my cell phone is back in the room or off, or I'm using my cell phone just to take snapshots and not be, looking at Facebook or on Twitter or all this other crap that I do that dominates my life 18 hours a day, then I start to really be present. That's when I'm in an area and it's like I'm looking now and I'm starting to see. So until I look, I don't see. So I could be driving through the countryside. If I'm not looking, I see nothing.
Yeah.
But once I'm there and I'm really looking, all of a sudden now I get really, really focused into the present moment, and that's when I start to see.
I think
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Because it's something I fight. I think I'm never in that mode. I'm always in the mode I don't see. Because, I don't have it here right in front of me, but I got my infrared converted Nikon D2X back, and I went out the other day to take some photos with it, and I just couldn't find anything I really liked. I'm having trouble myself getting into that mode of seeing. Were you always able to put yourself in that mode, or was that a learned thing?
I would say that it was probably the amount of shooting that I did in my earlier years that helped me get there. So when I first moved to Boston, I had a Minolta SLR, and I used to wander. This is going to sound weird, but I used to wander the streets throughout the afternoon, late afternoon and early evening with my camera doing street photography. And sometimes I would go out and I would shoot a couple of rolls of film, and I would immediately come home and develop the film, and I'd look at it and I'd say, this is all shit, and I'd throw it in the garbage.
Yep.
And I mean, I don't have to tell you how many rolls of film I wasted doing this, but then I started to get to the point where I would look at the roll of film and I'd hold it up and I'd go, wait, this looks a good one here. And I would put that on the light box and I'd say, yeah, I want to print this one. And so slowly but surely I started to notice that one or two of every roll started to emerge as something that I could work with. And then I realized that I didn't have the skills to bring the image up and out of the negative itself. So I had to acquire those skills. So while I was at engineering school at Northeastern University for electrical engineering, I snuck out at night and enrolled at the New England School of Photography. My parents didn't know I was doing this. And I usually spent, from about 7 or 8 at night till 2 a.m. in the dark room while I was getting up the next morning and going to engineering school at Northeastern. So it was my passion to be out there taking these photos and then going back to the lab and then working with a professor or an instructor at the time to help perfect how I was able to bring that image out of the negative. And later, when I started converting to digital and started to use tools like Lightroom, my goodness, I knew what I wanted to bring out. I just didn't know how to work the software yet. That I had to learn over time.
Now, of all the different avenues of photography you could have gone into, why landscape? And I was looking through your photos the other night, getting the images. I started going through them. There's not, and a lot of landscape photographers do this. They don't have any people whatsoever in the image, and they're, yep, here you go, no people, no people. This is typical for landscapes. They speak for themselves. You have a lot of beautiful shots of landscapes. And then boom, I saw one that was I think some little girls in a line, some in Iceland, I think it was. And
Yes,
now,
in Ireland. Yep.
As Ireland.
Yep.
Okay. And so you do have people every once in a while. Why? But most of your focus is landscape. Why did you pick landscape? Why is that your passion versus other areas of photography?
So for me, my thing is epic. When I make a picture, I want it to be epic. And when I go someplace, I want to express that epicness that I see. And so landscape is my way of doing it. I feel like I can do something really uniquely me with landscape photography that I can't do if I'm shooting with a long lens on a safari. Pictures of animals are wonderful, but I don't think I could produce anything different or better than anybody else.
Yep.
But with landscape photography, I can. And when I am standing there and I am like watching this amazing sunset, and I'm watching as the sky just dissolves into these beautiful hues and colors and shades, it's like, I mean, I hate to put it this way, but it's almost like having an orgasm. It's like I'm going, oh my God. And at that moment in time, all I could do is manage to work my camera while I'm in awe of what's around me.
And we have one up right now that probably put you in awe, the one with the rainbow.
Yep.
That is a fantastic rainbow shot.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you have, and there's one with people, but you have also a good mix of color shots, landscape shots, and some black and whites, and I think maybe even some infrareds. If I saw that. Going to the infrareds first, are you using a filter, or do you have a body that's converted to infrared?
I converted a Sony RX100 portable camera to infrared, and it's 20 megapixels. And if you see some of my pictures from New Zealand, there's some infrared that I took from a plane that is staggeringly sharp and crisp and clear with that little camera.
Do you know what do they call it? What type of filter?
Nanometers?
Yeah, what nanometer?
It's 790.
790, okay.
Yeah. So it's for pure, deep, dark, black and white. Like 560 is a blend, is a color blend. That's nice too. I never converted a camera to 560, but I've seen other people's work and I think it's really neat.
Yeah, I've seen some of those too. I ended up going with a 720, which is, I guess, as close to this, if there is a standard IR.
Right.
So on 720. Okay, so let's see, what else do I have? Oh, you had another quote that that I thought was really good, that something for people to think about, that because a lot of us do this where we compare ourselves to other photographers. But you said in one of your blog posts, don't compare yourself to other photographers, compare yourself to you of yesterday.
That's right.
And that's a great quote and something to think about.
It is. I'll tell you, sometimes what happens, I remember at one point I was on a trip to, I was going to Death Valley, and I've been to Death Valley many times, and I was on a trip with other photographers, and there was this young guy. I say young, he was probably in his mid-20s, and he had like 3 Nikons hanging off his neck, and they were all brand new, D800s or D810s or something, and with all these lenses, and he's sitting there with 2 tripods, and he's shooting all over the place, and we go back later, and I take a look. His work is gorgeous. So I said, "How long have you been shooting?" He says, "Oh, I just started about 2 years ago." And it's sort of like at that moment they said, "That son of a bitch, he started 2 years ago, and I've been photographing for like 40 years. How did he get so goddamn good so fast?" And I realized, I mean, this is the danger of trying to compare yourself to somebody else. I used to, look at people's work and go, "Oh my God, that's wonderful. I wish someday I could do that." And I don't do that anymore. What I do now, and I think part of why I wrote what I did, was because I'm only looking to get better than I was the last time I photographed. And to me, that's the most meaningful way to compare my work. I look at my work. For example, right now, I look at my old blog posts. Some of the pictures you have are from older galleries, and I go, "Ooh, yeah," compared to my newer work, I like my newer work much better.
Yeah. Well, I read that, and it's great for photography because so many of us compare ourselves to somebody else. And you're right. Who hasn't run into that situation where you see these great photos, then you find that the photographer started just a couple of years ago, and it makes you sick because you've been shooting forever. And like, what is wrong with me? But it also affects other avenues of your life. Who doesn't compare themselves to other people in life in a lot of different ways? And I think that's a great lesson for you to think about is don't worry about those other people. Worry about you. Are you improving?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's
So
a
I need to
great
quit
way
worrying about
measure.
Tim beating me on my Fitbit all the time and worry about me beating me.
Right.
There
Well,
you
the
go.
other thing is you guys keep each other motivated, and that's the good part of both you doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned your page, your blog post, and you've got a lot of them out there. Let me see if I can pull that up. Yeah, you got a lot of blog posts out here. What made you start deciding to blog about your photography?
Well, you see, I'm also a writer, and I love to write. I have a science fiction book that I'm 80,000 words into now. I wrote a business book last year. It was released as a #1 Amazon bestseller. I have a second business book that's going to be out soon. And to me, writing is a lot like romance. You just don't walk over to a woman and kiss her. You have to first intrigue her into wanting to kiss you. And then from there, you have to romance her and slowly seduce her into coming into your world and seeing you the way you want her to see you. And so for me, writing is a lot like romance. I feel as if I can write in such a way that I can maybe pull you into my world so that you can sort of see through my eyes and see some of the things that I see when I'm standing there in the middle of the night, sometimes in the middle of the desert or in the middle of a swamp or wherever I am, and get that feeling of total presence looking out at the epicness around me. So that's what my writing is about. So I love to write posts. In fact, some of the times I have to cut them down to reasonable sizes.
How often are you putting out a blog post?
I publish every Thursday morning at 7 a.m.
Wow, that's impressive. How long have you been doing that?
Oh, I've been doing it regularly, probably just for the last year. Before that, it was only trips that I would publish.
And so, what type of things are you blogging about? You said trips, but yeah, I think I saw somewhere where you did a little review of software, or did a review of some software.
Yep.
Do you keep a running list of here's all the things I want to blog about, or just they pop in your head and hey, let me do that?
I actually usually have 2 or 3 blog posts pre-written at a time. And so like I got on a binge of reviewing the Mac Fun software. I love their software. So I just kept reviewing their different modules. And so that was great because I had a bunch of reviews and, in stock, ready to go for the next coming 2 or 3 Thursdays.
Yeah.
Then what I'm starting to do is I'm starting to really go back and talk about flying, because my new hobby is flying with a drone and doing drone photography.
Yeah.
And so last year was the first year that I really started to make serious photography with a drone. And my next blog post, which is due out this Thursday at 7 a.m., is all about photography from 300 feet in the air.
That has really changed things. That whole drone thing, and you see it used everywhere. Professionally, photographers. We have a guy who's been on the show before who's a real estate photographer, and that now a drone shot is a part of his photography package for the real estate agent.
Yep.
Wedding photographers. I mean, it is just exploding everywhere.
It
No
is.
longer have to go rent a helicopter, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right. Before you'd have to go rent a helicopter.
Yep, exactly. Well, think about it. I mean, you could do things now with drones that simply weren't possible. I mean, like I just told you, I'm going to Greenland to go photograph the icebergs in Greenland. Well, let me tell you, I'm going to do it from the boat. I'm going to use my Sony gear, but the drone is going to be in the air circling those icebergs, and I'm going to be doing time-lapse photography with the drone. So
Wow.
that's going to be cool.
I can't wait to see that work.
Yeah, really.
Me too.
So I was looking. We had your page pulled up a minute ago, and I'll pull it back up here now too. And you have in your portfolio, you have a lot of the different places you've gone to. And let's see if I can read this: Iceland, Jordan, Death Valley, Prague, other.
Bhutan.
Yeah, and it's hard for me to read it in this little screen I have.
Yeah,
The website's fine, so I encourage people to go to the website to really see it, which is mitchrussotravels.com. We'll have the link in the show notes. But you've been to a lot of different places, and maybe they're all here, maybe they're not. Scotland, Peru. Italy. Do you have a favorite place? Maybe that's
Yeah,
Iceland because you've gone there so many times. But do you have a favorite location that you want to go back to?
Yes, I will probably be going back to Iceland until they put me in the ground. It is one of the most absolutely fascinating, most beautiful places in the world, and there are spots in Iceland that I visit over and over again, like Jökulsárlón, because it's just so amazing. And the thing about Iceland is that it's just about the easiest place to travel to. I'm on the East Coast, so 4 hours and 45 minutes later, I could land in Keflavik Airport in Reykjavik, outside of Reykjavik, and I rent a car and I get on the N1 and I could stay on the N1 for a week and never get off of it
Wow.
and stop all over the country because it's basically one road that circles the whole country.
Now, what about like lodging? Is there hotels there or what?
Yep, there's hotels like any other place. It's getting very crowded though.
Okay.
Iceland is getting so popular now that when I used to go in the winter, we sometimes didn't even make reservations. Now they're sold out months in advance, and the prices have all gone up. So, it's
Yeah.
it's just becoming it's overpopularized right now.
Okay, so Iceland would be your favorite location to go to. I'm sure you love a lot of these places, but
I
Iceland's your
love them
favorite.
all. Yeah, I love them all, and I go back to many of them. I mean, I've only been to Scotland twice, and I want to go back to Scotland. I've only been to Morocco twice, and I want to go back to Morocco. I mean, there are places when I was in Bhutan, I loved Bhutan, but I don't want to go back there again. It wasn't. I mean, I loved the work I did there, and I had a great time. But frankly, it was probably the hardest trip I ever did. It was something like 37 air hours to get there.
Wow.
And it was a tough trip. And then there was a lot of high altitude hiking. And, as I get older, my equipment gets lighter and my distances get shorter.
Yeah.
So,
Well, with all these great images, do you have a favorite image?
no.
Something that means something to you that makes it a favorite?
Okay, there is one, and it's called the Eye of Sauron. And it's one of the first images that comes up when my website loads. And it's an Iceland image. And it's probably in some ways the most iconic of all of my Iceland images. And it's also one that I've never been able to duplicate. So, and I've gone back to that spot many times, and I can't somehow get that exact moment where if you hit the slider to the right, that's it right there.
Yeah.
So if that moment in time is gone forever, those two peaks with the sun coming up like the eye did in the movie will never happen again while I was there with the sky that way and the colors and it was just one of the most beautiful moments of my photographic career, and I love that image. But then again, as I said before, my last trip was my favorite trip always.
Yeah.
So that's my problem. I get so excited about every new trip I go on and every place I visit because to me, even if I've been there before, it's just total wonderment to be in the moment and seeing again. So I'm not happy if I'm not creating. And if I can't be at a place where I can look, then as I said earlier, I just won't see anything.
Yeah. No, and I think that was one of the images I picked too when I was going through your site because I didn't have that thought of Eye of Sauron, but now you say it, I think of it, I think I see it, but that just image, I just love that image when I came across it. You've exhibited some of your work before too, haven't you?
Yes, it turns out that when I built my software company, I used to weekends occasionally I would go in the darkroom and I'd make large black and white prints and I'd hang them in the company. And a group of employees came to me and said, "Mitch, you got to enter this contest." And I said, "I hate contests. I don't even like going to photo clubs. I can't stand that stuff." They said, please, just this one contest. Could you please enter it? And I said, okay. And I made one 8x10 black and white print of a shot I did in Ireland. And I won Black and White Image of the Year. And that was the Sierra Club Image of the Year Award.
Wow. Awesome.
So that opened up a whole world that I was unaware of. All of a sudden, I started getting requests from galleries, and I started doing one-man shows in galleries around the country, and my work was starting to sell pretty broadly. But just as that was happening, my company was getting larger and larger, and I had just sold it to another very large company, and I was about to transition it. And I also, my daughter was just born as well. So I decided at that moment in time that I would shut down that part of my life and focus on my new family and my company. And so I stopped exhibiting for all those years.
Do you think you'll ever do it again?
You know, it's a lot of work. And the answer is yes. I just got invited. I just was asked to exhibit last week for a one-man show. And I almost said yes on the spot. But I know that it's going to take a lot of prep work because I'm a perfectionist, probably like you.
Yeah.
And, you know,
I would be so nervous because, you know,
oh
you
my
think
God, I can't imagine it.
you would hope that everybody would just come there and just take in the art and just, you know, enjoy it. But I would be so nervous that people were going to just be critiquing it and you know, doing all that kind of stuff. You know, that's something I applaud the people who can do that, who can go out there and do the exhibits.
See, that's the other thing you asked me before about why I like landscape photography. So a lot of the work that I show on my site are going to be some of my best images. I mean, obviously, I'm not publishing the bad ones. So when I print, and I mean when I print big, like 16 by 20, 20 by 24 big, I'm reproducing the epicness, if that's a word, of where I was. And you know, when I look at a print of mine that big, it's a little overwhelming to me because all I'm generally seeing it on is a screen. So it'd be fun to make 20 prints that big and exhibit. I haven't done that in a while.
That would be nice. I love printing things big, maybe not quite as big as you did, but the one behind me here, I think that's a 20 by 30.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, so I like big images. Have a 16 by 20 in front of me. Generally, when I print these days, if I don't print a whole lot, but I'm going to print it big.
Yep, cool. Me too.
well, Mitch, we're coming up on the hour, and so we're going to come into the end. One of the things I wanted to ask you, and I think you mentioned it, but let's bring it up again, is what is next for Mitch? What are you going to do next?
Well, you know, part of at this point in my life, I love travel. I love photography. I want to do more of that, and I want to share my thrill and love of being in epic places with other people. So I'm trying to do more and more trips where I take people with me on these different trips, and we visit these amazing places where I could share my joy of the place with other people. So I want to do more of that. I want to travel more. I want to photograph more. I've always wanted to do that. And so now I'm starting to do it.
Yeah, when you do something like that, do you is it just friends, or do you put a post on your website, or how do you get people who might want to go?
I put a post on my website, and I work with a travel company. And so basically they handle all of the logistics, and I guide or lead the trip. And so it's a great combination because he's really, really great with the logistics. And this way I don't have to be bothered with any of that stuff. All I got to do is show up and inspire people and go to amazing places, which is what could be better than that, right?
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Yeah.
All right, Mitch. One thing we are doing in our shows now is what is in your camera bag. So
great question.
So we'd love to see what's in your camera bag, and let me get the shot set up where we're focused just on you.
Okay, so let me see if I can grab it quickly.
Okay. And guys out in chat on Facebook or on our webpage, if you have any questions for Mitch, now's the time to ask them as we're heading into the end of the show.
Okay, so so here's what I do that is different. What I do is I travel with a rolling bag. And here's my rolling bag. I don't know if you can see it.
I can, yeah.
And in there are my camera bodies, my lenses, and all of my accessories. And my infrared Sony is here too, somewhere buried under here. Oh, here it is, here. And I also put the everyday messenger bag that Peak Designs makes, and I pack that in my luggage. So when I get to a location, this rolling bag stays in the room, and I just take what I need for the day in my everyday messenger bag, along with my Gitso carbon fiber tripod and my the ball head that I have in my panoramic kit.
What ball head are you shooting with?
The Really Right Stuff.
BH-55?
Yes, that's the middle one or the large one?
That's the large one.
No, I use the smaller one.
I don't remember what that number is, but yeah, I'm familiar with the Really Right stuff. All right. Anything unique in there that besides camera gear?
Well, one of the things that I'm fascinated with is panos and panos done right. So if you look on my site, you'll see some church interiors where I did something like a 12 to 18 vertical pano. And, again, as a perfectionist, the first 2 times I did it, I didn't like it. So I went back and I redid them until I got it exactly right. And what I do now is I carry a pano setup so that when I end up at a place, I have a pano head and I have an L bracket so I can put the camera right at the exact spot. And I get the sensor at exactly at the I don't remember the name of the center of the sensor. And then as I rotate the camera, it's rotating on that bracket, so it keeps the perspective.
Yeah, I can't remember there's a term for that. You're right. I can't remember the term for that.
There's that little symbol on the camera that tells you where the plane is.
Right.
I can't remember.
I thought I saw something yellow in there. What was that thing?
Oh, those are my flashlights. So I'm a night photographer, and I spend a lot of time photographing at night, and I use Surefire flashlights. And the reason I use Surefire is because they're the brightest, the smallest, they're totally indestructible, and they're waterproof. So sometimes in night photography, if there's a body of water, I will submerge my flashlights to make the water glow. So that's part of why
cool.
that's why I got to have those flashlights, because I love them so much.
Hey, so out in Facebook, we'll come to that question on Facebook just a second. Let's finish up with the what's in your camera bag. What can you show us that again real quick?
Sure. Yeah. So my basic gear consists of the two Sony bodies, an A7R and an A7R2, and a few lenses. This is probably what you saw, right?
Yep, that's it.
Yeah. So this is the Surefire G2, and it's on my site. I talk about how I use the flashlight. The other thing I do a lot of is I carry with me ND filters.
Oh yeah.
Two very, very, very strong ND filters.
Which ND? What level? What strength?
The ND 1000, which is a 10 stop,
okay,
and an ND 16, which is a 4 stop.
Wow. Okay.
And to me, this is like using an ND filter under the right conditions, like in Iceland, as the water is rushing up and down the coast while you're focusing in on this incredible ice crystal. The ND filter just compresses time. Mm-hmm. It just makes everything look so sensual and beautiful, and it's like grabbing time and shoving it into one frame. It's like a 7, 8, 10 second video in a single frame. I love it.
Yeah, no, that's great. I love ND filters. Okay, well, Mitch, thank you for sharing what's in your camera bag. Next, let's take Willie Ford asked, what part of Ireland did you visit? And Mitch.
Well, we always go to County Mayo because that's where Ron's house is.
Okay.
Ron Rosenstock has a house there. And that we start out in Westport. And Westport is now a pretty built-up community. When I was going there, it was not really much there except the little town center. Now it's all kinds of hotels and stuff. But we day trip around. We go out to Atchell Island in Ireland, and we photographed the abandoned huts and cottages out there. It's a lot of fun.
Okay. I just Tim had type Iceland. So a little joke I corrected is we can see the show notes together as we work through this. Okay, so now we're wrapping up. One more question for you. Any tips that you would like to share with the community, photography or non-photography, tips you'd like to share with the community?
Okay, so I'm gonna tell you the one thing about travel photography that it's a law that you cannot violate. And here it is. You gotta chill out. You gotta be flexible. You gotta be prepared for anything to happen. So, if I arrived in Jordan and there was no hotel room, we've already been traveling, all throughout the Middle East, and so you know what? You got to roll with the punches. Mm-hmm. You gotta just say, you know what? This is what happens when you travel. If a plane is late and you miss a plane, you got to know that, hey, this stuff happens. It's not a big deal. So the first rule of travel photography is if you're going to get uptight, if your comfort is more important than anything else, then you're not a match for travel photography. But if you're in a place where you're completely okay with being a little inconvenienced if you have to, or going without a night's sleep if you have to, then just roll with the punches. It makes the whole trip so much more enjoyable for you and for everybody around you, for that matter.
No, that's a great tip. That is a great tip, because I think a lot of people get a schedule in their mind and they want to stick to that schedule, and anything that bumps them off that schedule is now got them out of sync. And they being flexible and rolling with the punches is a great tip.
Yeah. The other photographic tip, would be to slow down. There's no rush. I mean, you don't have to keep your finger on the shutter don't spray and pray. Think and shoot. And I guarantee you, the slower you go, the better your photography will get.
Very good. Very good. All right, Mitch. Well, thank you for coming out tonight. Where's the best place for people to watch what you do or to get in touch with you if they want to get in touch with you?
Well, they can go to mitchrussotravels.com, and there's a million different spots on the blog where you can either send me a note or an email or sign up for my weekly blog posts and get a little bit of slice of travel every week.
Awesome. Now let me put us back to all of us. Well, thank you, Mitch, for coming out. I got a few things to do here at the end of the show.
Okay.
Wait, we have one more question from Willie. Guys, would Mitch have a problem with looking at my work? Oh, okay. Willie would like to look at his work. I'm only 4 years with my DSLR and just wonder if I'm improving as I get along. Do you do any of that where you look at other people's work and give a critique?
I usually do it on my trips.
Okay.
But if Willie would like, I'd be happy to have him contact me. Have Willie send me a link through my website with your website or with your photo blog site, and I'll take a look at your stuff. No problem.
Very good. Thank you, Mitch. All right. So if you, I mentioned at the beginning of the show, if you came in late or you missed part of the show, this is recorded. You can get the video portion on iTunes, YouTube, and Vimeo. You can get the audio portion on Stitcher, Spreaker, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Podomatic, TuneIn, Podbean, and Google Play Music. If you're going to shop at Amazon, we'd love for you to use our Amazon link, which is jpegderaw.com/Amazon, where we get a small credit, doesn't cost you anything extra, and Tim and I use those funds to give away things. We either hold a contest at the end of the year, we always do that, we give away product, or we may do giveaways throughout the year, depending on how much we get from that. So we'd love for you to use our link, use it before you go to Amazon, and it doesn't have to be photography related. It can be anything. You could be buying, a new lawnmower if they sell those on Amazon.
They do.
Yeah. Or, if you're going to buy anything from Topaz Labs, we have a link there too. jpegderaw.com/Topaz Labs. We'd also love to have you come out and join us in the forums. Tim is
very active.
Very active, yes. I love our forums. It's just not a lot of activity going on out there, but we'd love to have you come out to the forums, jpegderaw.com/forums. And then, of course, where we do have a lot of activity and where the Facebook, the photo group, not the photo group, the photo contest, the monthly photo contest we have, where most of the people who enter are going to enter it through our Facebook group. That is, facebook.com/groups/JPEG2RAW. We'd love to have you come out there and join. There's an active group of people out there who are, always willing to help. We had a lady just 2 nights ago who had lost the cards. I think she deleted them or formatted the card or did whatever happened. She thought they all came off the card as she was downloading them. They didn't all come off the card, and she didn't notice it for a little while. She went back to get them off the card. They were gone. So she was in a panic. How do I get these off this card? There's never a guarantee. They may actually be lost. But she posted that in a group. Within minutes, had all kind of responses, including, I'm keeping track. If you tell me, Mike, this is how I successfully got those back, the program I used, I'm adding them to a post in the Facebook group, in the forums. And then when somebody asks, I can just give them that link. Hey, go try these things. These have been successful for people in the past. But that's in our Facebook group. We love to have you come out and join. And that is it for this week. We'll be back next week. And we'll see you then. Till then, keep it raw. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.